Hello students, this is our second lecture of second unit of project management, that is project identification, selection and planning. In this lecture, what is actually the project identification, selection and planning? In this, now we will discuss a point, that is what is a feasibility study. Feasibility study, it is sometimes called as a feasibility analysis or a feasibility report. It is a way to evaluate whether or not a project plan could be successful. A feasibility study evaluates the practicality of your project plan in order to judge whether or not you are able to move forward with the project. Means in the feasibility study, we can find out if the project will be successful or not. Means we will get our requirements within the time limit and budget or not. This is nothing but a feasibility study regarding to the project. It determines whether the project is likely to succeed in the first place or not. In the case of planning, in the stage of planning, we will get an exactly idea about the project, if it will be successful or there will be some of the risks, there will be some of the problems while completing the project. That this all this will be understood in the feasibility studies. It is typically conducted before any initial steps are taken with the project, including planning. It is one of, if not the most important factor, is determining whether the project can move forward or not. The study identifies the project market, if applicable, highlights the project's key goals, map out the potential roadblocks, and offers alternative solutions, and factors in time, budget, legal, and manpower requirements to determine whether the project is not only possible but advantageous for the common company or to undertake. Although the project managers may not be the ones conducting the feasibility studies, they can serve as critical guidelines as the project gets underway. Project manpower can use the feasibility study to understand the project parameter, business goals, and risk factors at play. Means only the project manager should is not considered to do the feasibility study. All the other project leaders or the persons working under the project leader can do the project feasibility study regarding to the different steps of the project, so that they will be able to understand if that particular step will be successful, it will meet its requirements or not. Means from these definitions we can say that what is actually a feasibility study? A feasibility study is an analysis that considers all of the project's relevant factors, including economical, technical, legal, and scheduling considerations that are likelihood to completing the project successful. Whether a project is feasible or not can depend on the several factors, including the project cost and return on investment, meaning whether the project generates enough revenue or sales from the consumers or not. However, a feasibility study isn't only used for project looking to measure and forecast financial gains. In other words, feasibility can mean something different depending on the industry and the project's goal. For example, we can say that a feasibility study that could help determine whether a hospital can generate enough donations and investment dollars to expand and build a new cancer center or not. Although feasibility studies can help project managers determine the risk and return of pursuing a plan actions, several steps and best practices should be considered before moving forward regarding the project. Means in the feasibility study, the all the requirements, it is not only considering the financial gains. Means if the project will be done within the fine it in the feasibility study we will be able to understand if all the resources, from all the resources, whatever the requirement, can we gain the requirement, can we complete all the requirements, and within the time also. All these things can be considered in feasibility study. In short, a feasibility study assesses the practicality of proposal plan or a project. A feasibility study that considers many factors including economical, technical, legal and scheduling to determine whether a project can succeed or not. Whether a project is feasible or not, it can depend on the project's cost and return on investment, which might include revenue from the consumers. A company may conduct a feasibility study to consider launching a new business or adopting a new product line. It's a good idea to have a contingency plan in case of the circumstances or if the original project is not feasible. That's why feasibility study is necessary. Let us see some of the key points of the feasibility study. First is technical capabilities. Does the organizations have technical resources to undertake the project? Means whatever the project and technical requirements of the project, all the project or whatever the requirement for that technical requirement, the resources can provide all the requirements that is to be studied in the feasibility study. Budget. Does the organizations have the financial resources to undertake the project, and is the cost benefit analysis sufficient to warrant moving forward? Then legality. What are the legal requirements of the project and can the business meet them? This is studied in the legality feasibility study. Risk. What is the risk associated with undertaking this project? That is studied in the this particular feasibility study. Is the risk worthwhile to the company based on the perceived benefits? Operational feasibility. Does the project in its proposed scope meet the organization's needs by solving problems and or taking advantage of the identified opportunities? Can the project be completed in a reasonable time or not? This is all the points are studied, particularly studied in the feasibility study about the project. Okay, getting the concept of feasibility study. Now we can say that a feasibility study analyzes the viability of a project to determine whether the project or venture is likely to succeed or not. The study is also designed to identify the potential issues and problems that could arise from pursuing the project. As a part of the feasibility study, the project manager must determine whether they have enough people, financial resources, and appropriate technology. They have to check everything regarding to the technology. They have to check they have financial resources, technical resources. They have enough manpower for the purpose of succeeding in that particular project. The study must also determine the returns on investment, whether it's measured as a financial gain or a benefit to society, as in the case of non-profit. In some cases, we can say that a feasibility study might include a significant change in how a business operates, such as an acquisition of a competitor. As a result, the feasibility study might include a cash flow analysis measuring the level of cash that is generated from the revenue versus the project operation cost. Now, here we can say that a risk assessment must also be completed to determine whether the return is enough to offset the level of risk of undergoing the venture. Now let's discuss the next point, that is benefits of a feasibility study. There are several benefits to feasibility studies, including helping project managers discern the pros and cons of the undertaking a project before investing a significant amount of time and capital into it. Feasibility studies can also be provide a company's management team with the crucial information that could prevent them from entering into a risky business venture. Now we can say that feasibility studies also help companies with new business development. They include determining how it will operate, potential obstacles, competitions, market analysis, the competitions, market analysis, and the amount of source of financial needed to grow the business. Now, the feasibility studies aim for marketing strategies that could help convincing investors and banks that investing in a particular project or business is a wise choice. Means, by the feasibility study, we can give a proper report to the persons, to the investors or to the bank about the project, that how we can succeed in that project, whatever the resources we are, technical resources, manpower, and all the things we are using in this particular project, so that they can invest in a particular project. Now let us see how we can conduct a feasibility study. There are some of the so many unique goals and needs for the purpose of feasibility study. Now let us see one of that. We have to conduct a preliminary analysis, which involves getting feedback about the new concept from the appropriate stakeholders. Consider other business scenario and ideas. By taking these ideas and by taking feedback of all this, we can form a good feasibility study. Analyze and ask questions about the data that is obtained in the early phase of the study to make sure that it's solid. Another way to conduct a feasibility study is analyzing and asking questions about the data that is obtained in an early phase of the study to make sure that it's solid or not. Means asking the questions and analyzing that data that we have obtained in early phase. By that, by the questioning that, by analyzing that data, we can find out the answers of many questions regarding the feasibility study. The next point we can consider is conducting a market survey or market research to identify the market demand and opportunities for pursuing the project or business. In one of the step, we can write an organizational and operational or business plan, including the identifying the amount of labor needed at what cost and for how long. Preparing a project, that is income statement, which includes revenue, operating cost and profit. Then we can prepare an opening day balance sheet, identifying obstacles and any potential values, as well as how to deal with them. By identifying these obstacles and finding all the values, we can deal with the risk regarding to that. We can make an initial go or no go decision about moving ahead with a plan. Means in when we perform a particular plan regarding the project, we can find out in different steps we can go with the steps or no go with the steps. By this strategy we can find out if the project is feasible or not, means it will be successful or not. Now, in the case of feasibility study, if a question arises, what is the purpose of feasibility study? Then we can say that a feasibility study is designed to answer whether or not the proposed project or idea it should go forward by determining whether the project or plan in practical and doable. A feasibility study that can identify strength and weaknesses of a proposed plan, that is the purpose of feasibility study. Means we should go with the plan or we should change in the plan. That is the purpose of feasibility study. Next question arises, what is included in the feasibility study? Here we can say that a feasibility study should include the level of resources and technologies that are needed and the return on investment from the projects. Next question arises here regarding feasibility study is that what is the example of a feasibility study? For the example of a feasibility study, we can say that if a major hospital in the city that is looking to expand its campus by adding a building, means there is a hospital, they want to add a building in the campus, the project manager and the hospital administrators, they carry out a feasibility study to determine the project's cost. Means they want to add a building in the campus, whatever will be the cost for adding that particular building in the campus, including the labor and materials for the building construction, the labor needed for the construction of the building and material that is needed for the construction of the building. The feasibility study here in this project is an analysis of a potential need and expected number of patients, projected revenues and operating cost also, such as staff, doctors and nurses. The project managers explored how to finance the project through a combination of financing from local financial institutions and donations from the wealthy investors. This is done in the feasibility study. The potential risk to the project that was considered along with the public opinions and invest by the community. The return on investment was calculated and was determined that the forecasted revenue that exceeds the expected cost, leading the hospital administrators to approve the project. Here we can say that how to write a feasibility study. While writing a feasibility study, the report should include a preliminary analysis of a project, that is expected revenue, a market survey, a description of product or service, marketing strategy also, technologies and resources that are needed for the technologies and all other things. The report should also include the organizational layout of the project, a timeline and forecast for the financial result. This is how we have to write a feasibility study, or we have to find out, or we have to make a feasibility study report by considering all the things that I have told. Now let us see what are the benefits of conducting a feasibility study. Improvement project teams focus, Okay, by feasibility study it will improve the project team's focus, it will identify new opportunities, provides valuable information for an go or no go decisions, it will narrows the business alternatives also, identifies valid reason to undertake the project, enhances the success rate by evaluating multiple parameters, it aids decision making on the project. It identifies reasons not to proceed. Apart from the approaches to the feasibility study, some of the project required some new constraints to be analyzed. There are internal project constraints we have to consider, technical, the technology we are using, the budget and resources. Internal corporate constraints that we have to consider is financial, marketing and export, etc. And external constraints, that is logistics, environment, laws and regulations. While conducting a feasibility study, there are different steps for the purpose of feasibility study. First one is to conduct a preliminary analysis. In this, we will begin by outlining a project plan. One should focus on an unserved need, a market where the demand is greater than the supply, and whether the product or service has a distinct advantage or not. Then you need to determine if the feasibility factor are too high to clear or not, that is too expensive or unable to effectively market, etc. All these things we have to consider under a preliminary analysis. Next to that, the second is defining a scope, means we have to prepare a project income statement here. In that, in this step it will require one to work backward. We have to start with what was expected in the income from the project to be, and then what the project funding is needed to achieve that goal. This is the foundation of an income statement. That things to take into account here includes what services are required and how much they will cost, any adjustment to revenue such as different things, reimbursements and all other, etc, etc. The next step conducting the while conducting a feasibility study is market research. Here we have to conduct a market survey or research or perform market research. In this step, it is key to the success of your feasibility study. So make your market analysis as throughout a possible. It's so important that if you're any organization that doesn't have the resources to do a proper one, then it's advantage to hire an outside firm to do so. Means if any industry that is not able to do the market survey, then they have to hire an outside firm for doing the market survey, because it is key to success. Market survey is the key to success for any project to be successful. The market research that is going to give you a clearest picture about the revenue and return on investment. Any one investor invest in a project when there will be something return on the project, then only they used to invest in that. Then return on investment, then can then we can say that some of the things to consider are the geographic influences of the market, and we have to analyze the competitors also, the value of market and what particular share will be, and if the market is in open to expansion, that all these things we have to take into consideration while conducting a market survey. Then only that will be a successful project. Next step, we say that financial assessment, that is planning business organizations and operations. In the financial assessment, it will include an estimate of the assets and liabilities. Once that should be as accurate as possible. To do this, we have to create a list that includes items, sources, cost, and available financing. Liabilities to consider are such things as we have to lease or purchase of land, buildings and equipment, financing for assets and account receivables. All these things we have to take into consideration in financial assessments. In the next step, that is roadblocks and alternative solutions. We have to find what are the roadblocks in completion of the project, what are the things that are not making us to complete the project in given time and requirement. We have to find out that roadblocks, and we have to find different alternative solutions while in the feasibility study, so that while actually performing a project or executing the project, at that time we can directly use the alternative solutions for that purpose. Next one is research reassessment of results. Reassessment of results is nothing but reviewing and analyzing all the data. Means all the steps are very important, but the review and analyzing are especially important to make sure that everything that is that is as it is, it should be, and nothing requires changing or tweaking. Means everything is going according to plan. We have to consider in this particular step, we have to find out if everything is going as the plan or not, and if there are some of the problems, then we should be able to use the alternative solutions for the problems. So in this particular stage, we have to re-examine previous steps such as income statements and comparing it with the expenses and liabilities, and is it realistic or not, that everything we have to find here. This is also the time to think about the risk analyzing and managing, and we have to come up with a contingency plans also. The last step is final decisions. Means here we have to make go or no go decisions. Okay, whenever now at the point to make a decision about whether the project is feasible or not, that sounds simple, but all the previous steps that we have seen now, that leads to the decision making moment. Okay, a couple of another things that we have to consider before making that binary choices is whether the commitment or not, is it worth the time or not, efforts and money, and is it aligned with the organizational strategies, goals, and long term aspirations also or not. Everything we have to decide here in the final decision stage. We have to decide either we have to a go decision or no go decision here. Okay, clear about the feasibility study concept. Okay, in the last lecture we have seen a pre-feasibility study, and now we have seen feasibility study. Getting the difference between the two, in the pre-feasibility study, we can say that pre-feasibility studies are an early stages of analysis of a potential mining project. Means while performing any project at the initial stage, we have to find out a pre-feasibility study. They are conducted by a small team and are designed to give company a stakeholders the basic information they need to give a green light to a project to choose between potential investment. Means we have to give a short idea about the project. Means they should get an exactly idea about the project, that they should go with the project, means they should invest or not in the project. That is nothing but the pre-feasibility study. And in the feasibility study, after the starting of the project, after the initiation of the project, we have to find out a we have to find out a feasibility study, where we can find out if the project that we are undergoing now, it will be feasible or not, that it will give a proper outcome or not, it will meet all the requirements and or not. And we have to consider different terms regarding the in that particular feasibility study, that is technical terms, different technologies we are using, different resources regarding the technical terms. Then we have to consider the financials also, we have to find out the market survey also. All these things we are getting in the feasibility study. This is the difference between pre-feasibility study and feasibility. Pre-feasibility, it is an early stage. Feasibility, it is after the initiation of the project. This is all about the feasibility study. Okay, now let us see what we have seen in this particular lecture. In this lecture, we have mainly in this unit we have mainly seen the project identification, project initiation, pre-feasibility study, and feasibility study. Now let us revise once. What is project identification? The project identification is a process in the initiating phase of a project life cycle for identifying a need, problem, or opportunity. Once identified, a project is initially documented, objectively defined, that what's identified or not. This is the project identification, in which the process of initiating a phase of a project life cycle. And in project initiation, we can say that in the project initiation, it is the first step in starting a new project. During the project initiation phase, we can say that one, establish what we have done, what we are do sorry not done, what we are doing in the project and what the business values it will deliver. Then the use of information to secure buy-in from key stakeholders. This is nothing but the project initiation. And first was the project identification. Means we can say that project identification is the first step of a project life cycle, but before the actual project initiation starts. Okay, it is not actually the after the project initiation. Before the project initiation, this particular project identification steps, that particular step come into the picture. Here the entrepreneurs need to identify and zero in one project that it suits their requirement or not. They can help them to attain their goals before spending significant time and resources on the project. So that they also need to study here in detail about the feasibility of a proposed project well before they start the planning the project. Means before actually planning, before actual initiation, we have to do the project identification here. The purpose of project identification is that to develop a preliminary proposal for a most appropriate set of interventions and courses of actions within specific time and budget frame to address a specific development goal in a particular region or setting. Here, we have to find a select information on project options that must be gathered to enable a government and financial agencies to select a priority project and reach the agreements among stakeholders on arrangements for preparations of the work. Here we have to include that setting up steering committees or national preparation teams. Then the results of identification work that should be summarized in a report, project brief, or a concept document, the format of which will depend upon the government's or the financial agency's requirement. This is all about the project identification. Next concept, we have seen the project initiation, that is the actual first phase or the actual initial phase of a project life cycle. The project initiation is nothing but first step in starting a new project. During the project initiation phase, one has to establish why you are doing a project, what business value it is delivering, then use that information to secure buy-in from key stakeholders. That is nothing but the project initiation. Now we can ask that what is the need of project initiation phase? Means why does project initiation phase matters in the particular project to be successful? Starting a new project is exciting, but it's important to make sure that your initiatives will actually add values before jumping into the planning phase. That's where the project initiation comes into the picture. It offers a structured approach to demonstrate your project business case and prove that the work you will do is feasible or not. Project initiation also that ensures you to loop in stakeholders early on. Okay, so you can secure essential resourcing, gain visibility for your project, and prevent costly roadblocks down to the road. We can remove the roadblocks, we can find out the alternative phases here. Means we can say that great projects that often start with a great hopes and expectations, but if a project that isn't initiated correctly, it can drift off course and head off disaster. Means it can go out of the stack. One must anchor the project that outset by providing it with a structure. Ideas are plentiful, but having a project plan and executing it will allow you to actualize those hopes and ideas. Of course, there are many steps in the successful execution of a project, but the project initiation is the first and, in some way, the most important step. This is all about the project initiation. After that, we have seen pre-feasibility study and feasibility study that we have discussed now. In the pre-feasibility study, that was before the actual initiation of the project, so that we will get an exactly idea about the project, means what are the requirements of the project, and all that ideas will be understood in a pre-feasibility study. And then in the only the particular investor will get a brief idea about the project, if that project will be feasible or not, and if that project will be successful or not. After that they will decide to go or not go with the project. That is nothing but a pre-feasibility study. And in the feasibility study we are making different surveys, we are making different reports regarding the feasibility study. In a feasibility study we are conducting that feasibility study considering different constraints, and after that we are forming a report, a big report on a feasibility study.